20 years ago, I did a planting of a memorial grove up in this park in the Santa Cruz Mountains. 30 redwood trees were donated for this memorial grove, and they were donated by a nursery that gave us trees that were in the containers for far too long. They were all 5-gallon containers, they were all root bound, but because they were free, we planted them anyway. So, of the 30 trees, I think there's only about 15 of them left. And these, right here in front of us, are the most prominent of all of them. And interestingly, out of 30 trees, only one of them, this one right here in the front here, has reached a size of even 6 inches in trunk diameter. Many of the trees are still spindly little trees because the root systems were all girdled and they were all root bound, but that they were put into a native, natural climate, suffering like they would in the wild, meaning that they don't get any additional water. Now this is really interesting because what it tells you, well, first off, they weren't the best choices of trees because they were all root bound. But what it tells you is that a tree in the wild grows much, much slower than it would if it was in a backyard with a lot of additional irrigation. Now when I planted these trees, this fir tree, which is about 12 inches in diameter now, was just a little sapling. It was only about 10 inches tall. And this stump was quite a bit bigger and it was rotting away. I did take some of the decay from this stump and I put it around the bases of some of these trees. And, you know, in fairness, I did water these trees occasionally. You know, once or twice a year for the first 4 or 5 years. But it's interesting. That's a 20-year-old tree, not counting the time that it was living in the pot. And it might have been in that pot for 3 or 4 years. So as small as this redwood tree is, it might be 25 years old. Now there's a redwood that we planted right here. And those fir trees weren't there. The oaks weren't there. That was in a clearing, and now it's been completely overshadowed by the firs, and there's barely anything left. So unless I get up there and do a little bit of trimming, this redwood won't survive. It'll be overwhelmed by the more dominant fir trees.
And this is one of them?
This is a fir tree. That's not a redwood. This redwood right here is one of the original ones. It's only about 8 feet tall, but it's a double trunk, and that tells me that something fell on it a long time ago and put it to the ground, and then it resprouted off of the root system. So far I've only counted 8. Okay, we're sitting in the grove of redwood trees. And if you look up, the tallest tree is about 20 feet tall right now. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 redwoods here, and 1 fir behind us. Look at the size of that fir. All right, you're 10 years old right now. I planted these trees with your mother 20 years ago. So I'm guessing that the trees were about 5 years old in the pot. So these trees are all about 25 years old. Because this is on parkland, I don't expect this is ever going to change. Nobody's going to cut these trees down, I hope. Hopefully another tree won't fall on them and crush them. But when you're old, when you're a man, when you're my age, I want you to bring your kids up here and I want you to sit in this exact same circle. You find this circle of trees and I want you to remember today. Okay, can you do that for me? All right. I mean, when you're an adult, you'll come back here and it'll really mean something to you because you'll notice how much bigger these trees are, and you'll remember this moment and you'll look back on it. It'll be like a piece of living history for you. You'll do that, right? Okay. Of course? Okay. All right, we found 11 of them back in that grove, and we planted a few of them out here. There's one all by itself. Here's one that's kind of towering over this grouping of firs. Boy, those firs are going to overwhelm that poor redwood. Look at this grove of firs. Look at how many are coming up. And there's one more big one over there and one over there. So 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So out of 30 trees that we planted 20 years ago, there are only 15 of them left. Let's see if I can find any more. If there's any more, then that would be a positive. That's only a 50% margin of survival. But for the most of their lives, they didn't get any additional water. And this isn't really redwood zone right now. Redwoods like it a little bit lower. We're at about 2,700, 2,600 foot elevation, and they usually like it below 2,000 foot. And up on the top of a ridge up here, they don't get a lot of additional water. And they don't get enough fog either. Now, you know, none of these firs were in here when we planted this. And there weren't near as many of the tan oaks. So this whole forest is making a very noticeable transition. I don't know what's going to happen with the grouping of fir trees that dense. Survival of the fittest, that's what it's going to be. The dominant ones will win out and they'll overshadow the little ones, and one by one they'll start dying off. It'll be interesting to watch.
Do you know what mushrooms are safe to eat and what aren't?
I know some of them, but I'm not an expert.
Do you know if sulfur fungus is okay to eat?
By the looks of it, I would say probably not, but it might be. But the consequences of eating a mushroom that is dangerous can be fatal. So you don't know, you don't do it. Oh yes, Santa Cruz Mountains. Gotta love it up here. Just gotta love it.